Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, basketball for real. We look ahead to a conference tournament opener for the Red Raiders against West Virginia, and we consider putting racially insensitive toothpaste back in the bottle. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Always appreciate being your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't so far so you never miss an episode, as we are still coming to you within somewhat of a fluid time, obviously, as it relates to Texas Tech men's basketball leadership. But we did get some clarity as to who will lead this thing rolling through the Big 12 tournament, and that's where we begin here today. That's going to be the interim head coach, Corey Williams. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan, and Chris joining us from Kansas City as we are on the road again, and actually with basketball to discuss. Chris, there's a game coming up later today, one that still somewhat remains important to the team. I know we probably lost all grasp of like resume building or anything like that. And of course, a couple of losses to end your regular season impacted that as well. But there is still an inkling of opportunity for Texas Tech at the conference tournament, right?
Yeah, there is. And I'm just kind of curious to see how these kids play, man, and just kind of what the vibe is. I think it's been pretty loose and free here in Kansas City. And I hope that they play that way tonight, just because in some ways you kind of look at it, it's all on the line, or you have no pressure at all, because you're likely going to have to win 3, maybe 4 games with a chance to extend your season. And I think there's some serious pressure on West Virginia to get this, to get a win tonight, because I think while most people have them in, a loss today would I think hurt that a bit, and how much do they fall with the loss? So I think they've got some pressure coming into this one. But I'm just, because the thing when these things happen, Cowan, is that and we've touched on this a little bit, but either the distractions of everything just overwhelm you, and you're off of your routine, and you're not locked in and focused, or you kind of rally around a guy like Coach Williams or each other, and you play you play your best. And I'm not sure what we'll get, but I just know the team is appears to be in a really good mood, and they're kind of loose. And like I said, I think that, and then they know how tough the game will be tonight and potentially tomorrow. And that's the fascinating thing about this Big 12 tournament, is that we've talked about it being the toughest league in the country. So it would suggest that winning the Big 12 tournament may be the toughest challenge in the country as far as conference tournaments go, just because of the competition game in, and the Red Raiders would have to win 4 games in 4 days.
Let me stop for just a sec, Chris. I don't know if your cord is like dragging on your zipper or something, but there's like a little like every 2 seconds. I'm sorry, dude. If we could, I think,
yeah,
or maybe your whiskers. I don't know. It's just like a little rustle.
So is okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine. It's just that I know.
Is it still rubbing? Because I have I think it was dragging on the zipper.
No, I don't hear it anymore.
Okay, I'm holding it up now, so that's
okay.
Why. You want me to start over and give you the same answer?
No. It was fine. I'll just count us back in, and we'll go from there.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, 3, 2, 1. And of course, Chris, with an interim head coach, new man at the top of the ship there at the steering wheel. I know ships don't have steering wheels, but they have a wheel of some kind. I'm not much for nautical references, but I'm trying anyway. I know Corey Williams, as a member of the program, an assistant, someone obviously that's familiar with everything going on with Red Raider basketball here. You would think, okay, there's a chance for some continuity as far as in-game, the way that things are approached. But it's not exactly the same. I mean, it's a different guy, different relationships, different ways of doing things as far as in-game stuff. So I'm curious, is there anything that you think just off the cuff might be a little bit different about the way that Corey Williams could manage a game?
My guess is along the lines of what we were talking about a second ago, specifically offensively. I bet you play a little bit looser. Maybe it's not as many play calls, if you will, on trying to run something. And again, that's just speculation. And I try to get a feel for that watching shoot around and some different things about just kind of, how they prepared. Not a lot of time, to really practice and dig in. So you won't see many like quote unquote changes just because you haven't had time. So I would expect mostly man-to-man defense. I think that, they'll be a little bit looser on offense and maybe want to play a little faster. But again, you just don't. And I'll be honest, when you're talking about West Virginia, though, the main thing that Corey Williams can do, and he should have a sign and print it up and put it all over the locker room, meeting room, is rebound. Because that when you play West Virginia, that largely decides the game. I mean, go back to the 2 games this year. In Lubbock, you were minus 18 on the glass. In Morgantown, you were plus 11. And we know how each of those games went. And I think there's a direct correlation into how the rebounding battle goes into, you beating West Virginia or not. That's just kind of how they play, and that's just kind of how it works.
Yeah, I was really curious to talk to you about the regular season series between these two teams because, man, not only was it a series that was split home and away, but you want to talk about some really different, kinds of ball games as far as the tone and who was dictating what or dominating what. And West Virginia may have got, as far as just domination, the better of Texas Tech on their home floor as compared to what Tech did to West Virginia on their home floor. But nonetheless, it was almost like you had some roles reversed in a way. And yeah, you said it right there. It really, I guess, all started on the glass. But is that just an effort thing? I don't really know what would change necessarily. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you have similar personnel in those matchups? You got Isaacs back in Morgantown. You lost him the first time around. You had an AMAC in both of those matchups, didn't you?
No, Fardaw's only played in the second one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that you're good at what you emphasize. Okay, and I think that clearly Bob Huggins came into that game going, we're going to crush these guys on the glass. Well, obviously when you have that, I think the Red Raiders, they spent every bit of prep leading up to that one game in Morgantown just trying to emphasize, look, this is where this game is going to be won or lost, and I also pointed out that you didn't turn it over too many times in Morgantown as well, and so that's what West Virginia does. They score enough points, but they do a lot of it off of second chance opportunities, or they do it, whenever you turn the ball over and they can get a run out. I mean, they're just really good in transition, and I think we need to. We need to emphasize too, like that second game in Morgantown. It's very rare that you survive a game and win it, especially on the road. Whenever you have a kid that goes for 27 points, like Eric Stevenson did. Now you had your own guy go for 27 and Jalen Tyson, but Eric Stevenson has gone for 23 plus in the last 5 games in a row, and it started with that game in Morgantown versus Texas Tech. So. He's clearly the focus tonight for Red Raiders on defense, is just trying to get him stopped. And I think Cowan, through that stretch, he's making on average of about 4 or 5 threes a game, making that many. So he's just been instant offense. And if you'll remember, and I wonder if this will get brought up at all leading up to this game. If I was Corey, I would mention it. But if you remember, after that game, Tech beats West Virginia, and I think it was Eric Stevenson that said after the game, hey, what happened here today? And he's like, well, I feel bad. We just lost to the worst team in the league. And, he kind of – and so I would be sure I would point that out if I was anybody in charge of Texas Tech basketball he's the show, man. I mean, they've got some good pieces around him, but he's kind of the guy that carries them.
Yeah, I forgot about that, so I appreciate the reminder. It will give me a little bit more motivation in watching the game here tonight. Chris, I'm just going to pretend that none of what we know is swirling around this program, and just kind of keep it to basketball here for just a minute. Because leaving the regular season, you had one of your most disappointing individual results of the regular season, that being against Oklahoma State on your floor. And I know that my word leaving that game was, I guess, disjointed. I don't know what it was about that day, Chris, but it seemed like a lot of team progress that you had made in playing with one another had taken a step back for some reason. I don't know. And obviously with everything else going on, maybe I shouldn't be foolish enough to just try to simply nail it down to basketball thoughts. There could have been other things impacting it as well at that time, I guess. But what did you see in that game against the Cowboys and just the basketball response to the way you finished this regular season? Where does that begin, man? Because that was a really tough day at United Supermarkets Arena. But first, today's episode brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. And now is the perfect time to download the FanDuel app. Become a new customer because new customers get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't hit. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, 3 points drained if basketball is your thing, or all points in between. Underwater basket weaving, anyone. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with that same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Where does that begin, man? Because that was a really tough day at United Supermarkets Arena.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if you can separate the basketball and what was, because I think we would all be naive if you are to suggest there was no correlation into kind of the way they played and now with what we know, because it was very clear that everybody already, the rest of us did not, but everybody else was well aware of that what had gone on. I don't know if anybody knew a suspension was looming. I certainly did not. And, I think that obviously what do we know, that there was a written reprimand that came out Friday. And this is when Kirby kind of was aware of or made aware of what had gone on. But I think there's probably a direct correlation there. And again, that may be a stretch for me. I just don't know how you could suggest there's not, I guess. Yeah. And so if you can't suggest there's not, there had to be something to it. But I felt like, basketball-wise, I felt like Oklahoma State just was a little bit more aggressive, a little bit hungrier, and wanted it a bit more. And I would go back to the week before when you played TCU, and that's when I really worried that the wind would come out of the balloon, because that was a game that if they get that one and they get the Oklahoma State game, I think we're having a much different conversation right now about their tournament chances. Now, yeah. I don't know, with everything that has gone on here, maybe that doesn't happen if you win the TCU game. Maybe you're not, there's not a situation that's swirling around the team and some things said and the suspension and all those things. But having said that, that's what surprised me about how, I guess, well they played in Lawrence. They could have, that's a perfect opportunity to kind of show up and roll over and just kind of get it over with. Yep. Against the team that was ultimately going to win the league, and you're at their place and all those kinds of things. But that's not what happened. I mean, they were in a position there, but it's just that. But it's largely the same, Cowan. It's far too often the opposition has been just a bit better across the board than you are, and I think not a lot better. And whether it's turning the ball over or on the glass or whatever statistical category you want to look at, other teams, that's what Kansas did. They made a few more free throws. They made a few more threes. They turned it over a few times less. They had a few more rebounds. And then you look up and it's a 4-point game and you lose, So, and that's kind of what Oklahoma State did. I mean, the wildest part about the Oklahoma State game is that you made more threes than they did. You turned it over less than they did. Your bench, which we've been begging for, bench production, You were plus 20, and it just made no sense. But you also had nobody in double figures, and It's just kind of a weird game. And I guess maybe now we know why. I don't know.
Yeah, and it probably is silly to try to separate those things. Obviously, for those guys within the program that had some idea of that going on before maybe fans did. But either way, that was a tough result that you're now going to be asked to bounce back from, particularly on the other side of the week that they have had, the weekend that they had in the first half of this week, I guess I should say, that they have had. Away from basketball, I don't think that there is, as we talked about yesterday, there's any reason to believe, like in the immediate present, that we're going to have, further news coming out about Mark Adams or resolution or announcements from Texas Tech. I could be wrong in that, but I had some suspicion that maybe we'd be in a little bit of a holding pattern for a time being, possibly as we get through the conference tournament or maybe wrap up the season at large. But Chris, something has stuck with me this week that you mentioned a few days ago in an uncertain capacity, but it seemed like the more conversations I've had that the week has gone on, that maybe there's been more smoke around this. You mentioned the thought of an opportunity to resign being offered by Texas Tech to Mark Adams, and that might have been declined. I was curious if you had any further reason to believe as the days have gone on that was actually the case. And if it was actually the case, does that already kind of tell us possibly what Texas Tech's perspective is on this matter? Is that still up in the air? Because the second question is just a moot point if the first one is not actually the reality. That stuck with me and a lot of our listeners, I know. Have you heard anything else about that bullet point? That stuck with me and a lot of our listeners, I know. Have you heard anything else about that bullet point?
Well, I've heard from people that there was an opportunity for Mark to resign. Again, I can't prove that. I'm not like sitting here telling you that I'm reporting that or anything like that. But I've heard that, and I think to your point, if that is true, then yeah, it would seemingly be an interesting scenario to coexist with somebody as its head coach when you've potentially asked them to resign. So, but I have to be careful here because I don't know that, but I wouldn't have said it had I not heard it from people that I felt like knew what they were talking about. So, that is. And I've thought about that too. It's like, okay, can you actually put the toothpaste back in the tube and everybody get back on the same page after you ask somebody to resign? But again, I can't say that's actually what happened
Right.
for sure. But I just because I just don't know where we go from here. I think that as we've talked about in some of these shows, the timing is everything here, and I think. Is Mark sitting back in Lubbock right now, which I guess they're, and I hope Luke Adams is obviously not here either. But I hope those guys are doing all right. And I hope that it's got to be very awkward for those guys too. But are they sitting there, planning practice next week and ready to be reinstated? Or is it, are you working on a contract buyout? I just don't know. But I think these are all kinds of fair questions to ponder, if you will. And I don't know, because you don't know how long you're going to be in Kansas City. And I do know if you were to lose tonight or lose tomorrow, you get back to Lubbock. And then I think it becomes the top of the priority list on trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do here? What does this look like? All those things. I just, again, it's a holding pattern. I will tell you too, before we get off the subject of conference tournament, I did speak with somebody. This is going to be a much different feel here in Kansas City this year because of Brett Yormark. I think I wanted to make sure that we discussed that just briefly because there are now courtside seats. I think this has been a baby of his, is this conference tournament, and a revenue opportunity, because I think there are a variety of courtside seats that they sold for like $4,000 a piece. I think there's a giant kind of like club area, not like nightclub, but like a club area for food and drink and all that for people that have paid certain ticket prices to be able to enjoy being at the tournament and things like that. So I think they're bringing in Shaq here to DJ. They're bringing in different acts, I think, just to kind of be a part of this deal. But he's trying to NBA this conference tournament up, I think, a bit by trying to create some serious revenue and trying to give it a bit of a different feel of sorts. But we were around some of the conference people yesterday, and and their comment was, I felt like when I worked in the conference office, we were on our heels, and then I feel like whenever Yormark showed up, we're on our toes. Like we are. It's like he's got some crazy ideas. He's got some good ideas, but he's just all about it. So I think that you'll see the Big 12 as a league put their best foot forward. And I think you're going to get some different, the way that the media covers this thing on television too. I mean, obviously I'm in charge of doing the radio stuff, but I think they'll do some different things in game and things like that maybe haven't been previously done before. So we'll kind of see what we get there too.
Yeah, it should really be interesting. As well, you heard Brett Yormark say he wants this conference to be younger, cooler, and hipper, I think.
Yeah.
I think was the quote. I don't know if that's the right order, but someone that's I've never known a cool person that set out with a mission to be cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. I don't know if you're not hip already. You say, now I will decide to be hip and then become hip. So I'm very curious to see how this lands. And you're right. This is kind of like the first public event foot forward, if you will, that maybe you could make a little bit different than everybody else's will be, or different than your own used to be. So I am kind of curious. And I've already forgotten who else is on the list. I saw Shaq was on the list. Jordan Sparks, which I guess is that, I don't even know who that is. That Precious, or is that an American Idol chick? I can't remember.
I think the latter is correct. Okay. I think Fat Boy, is another DJ they're doing on Friday. Maybe I think
of course DJ Fat Boy. I don't want to leave him out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember, but I just the conversation I thought was an interesting one, because all the people in the conference office feel like they are in a good spot because of their leader, and they just said that he has put a lot of emphasis on this particular weekend as it relates to the league, and I think you're also in the sweet spot too of like all these different like realignment and some of that stuff is with the Pac-12 kind of news out there. So this is going to be
and did you notice, Chris, George Kliavkoff, Pac-12 commissioner, said he's not having a press conference at his tournament, which I think is kind of atypical. He's like, I'm not talking to any of you guys about anything, so don't ask me.
Yeah,
I wonder why.
And typically, if you had anything good to say, you would call you would call three press conferences.
You'd be meeting the media off the bus at the hotel. Like, hey guys, want to ask me anything?
Yeah,
I think it should be really interesting. And I think the original report was that they were going for Fat Boy Slim, but they said not quite in the budget. We can get you DJ Fat Boy or DJ Slim. Okay, let's go with the Fat Boy then. Maybe Fat Boy Slim next time around. And as far
maybe
as
I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I thought I read that or heard that, but
you could literally throw out any word following the term DJ, and we would have no clue if you were wrong or right, Chris. I mean, DJ Curbside, as I'm just looking out the window, that could be a guy. Oh, we don't know. Paris Hilton, is she going to be there? Shaquille. It is kind of funny that to get younger, hipper, and cooler, you hire like a 50-year-old dude to come DJ. But it is Shaq. It is Shaq. And that's one of a kind DJ, I suppose. And I apologize, Shaq, if you're not near 50. You're probably not. So as we're enjoying some basketball here, stay with us on Locked On Texas Tech as we'll keep an eye on other fluid situations. And, as to what you said there about the Coach Adams timeline and a possibility of a resignation offered or things like that, putting toothpaste back in the bottle, I guess I am somewhat inclined, Chris, to at the beginning of this thought, okay, if it stretches out further, is that some indication that reinstatement is the more likely outcome? Is a quicker resolution an indication that it's going to be termination or departure? I think I might have a different answer now than I would have felt at the beginning of this. But if that smoke is real surrounding an opportunity to resign, then I think that gives you a real indication of where this thing could be going. And, man, there is a lot of smoke around that possibility right now. It's kind of hard to, offer the wife a chance to have a divorce. She says no, and you say, all right, well, let's continue our lives together. I mean, it's just like, I don't know how you put that toothpaste back in that bottle if that is the case. So very, very interesting. And we've had a lot of questions about that. So curious to see how folks will process it in the YouTube comments. Let us know how you're feeling out there on the Locked On Texas Tech YouTube page. Chris, in the meantime, enjoy some hoops, man. Maybe we'll have another game to discuss. It'd be all right with me.
Let's do it, man. Go Red Raiders. How about, we'll see if we can get to take saw Bob Huggins down in the hotel lobby last night, and that's the old opponent tonight. So we'll see what we get, and I hope everybody keeps hope alive, and we'll talk to you soon.
He wasn't crawling back to his room, was he?
No, not that I saw. Not that I saw.
He was on one of those luggage carts. They're just rolling him across the lobby.
He is he can hold some court at the Marriott hotel bar. I mean,
so.
He's this is where we normally stay. I think West Virginia usually stays here, and he holds court down there by the bar often. I don't pretend to know who all is always around or what all is being consumed, but he's been down there every year that I've been down there.
Meanwhile, Chris Level holding court by the Aqua and Sweet Tea Bar because he's that kind of guy. My man.
There you go. That's right.
All right, Chris. Appreciate the time, man. We'll visit with you on the other side of this one coming up tonight against West Virginia. We're out of 10 brothers, 9 are a guinea. For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for making Locked On Texas Tech your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts, and hope that you will check out Locked On College Basketball. It is that time of year. So check it out. Locked On College Basketball, your one-stop hoop shop right here on the Locked On Podcast Network for your second listen. Available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. For Chris, I'm Casey. We'll see you on the other side on Locked On Texas Tech.